Dave, how's it going today, man?
Doing good. How are you doing, Jared?
I'm doing pretty good. Where are you calling in from?
I am in New Mexico, which is Mountain Daylight Time, not too far outside of Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Unfortunately, the caverns are physically closed, as with many other things in our lives at the moment.
Yeah. So I'm calling in here from Alabama, which is Birmingham is for the most part shut down,
Yeah.
but they still have a lot of businesses are still running. But yeah, I guess that's a great place to start this conversation. We're obviously kicking off the new version of the podcast here
Hmm.
in a little bit of a unique time here for our world.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a little bit of crazy times out there, Dave.
It is insane times. I think most of New England through Maryland, most of the Midwest, Illinois, Ohio, everything is like basically closed down. So many people are being told that they're non-essential or that they're working from home, which I know you and I actually have a lot of experience kind of working remotely, and you're
Yeah,
calling in from Beloved Robot HQ, as everyone who can see the video
that's
can
right.
see the literal robots behind you. And I would be disappointed if anyone uh, didn't know what that meant. And I know both of us, for an extended period of time, have worked in this industry and have worked remotely. And it's interesting to see all of the changes that have been happening. Um, Over just the last couple of weeks. I mean, 3 weeks ago, we were standing in New Orleans at a trade show
Yeah,
conference, which is probably the last trade show Beloved Robot will go to in probably 2020. And who knows what 2021 looks like at this point.
yeah. I think it might have been the last trade show ever, Dave.
It
uh,
kind of feels that way. It kind of feels
yeah, it
that
was
way,
like,
Jared.
I mean, I remember us being there. It was the first week of March. So here, as we're recording today, it is March 23rd.
Hmm.
And so this obviously will drop later on. But yeah, it was the first week of March, and we were just sort of starting to get an inkling of, hey, the coronavirus is showing up on
Hmm.
U.S. soil, and we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out what that means for everyone. I remember meeting a few folks that were like, "Yeah, next week's spring break, and we're going on a cruise." And I hope to
Right.
God that those people didn't get on those cruise ships. But yeah, it's a little bit of a crazy time. I mean, the past few days, a lot, like you were saying, states have shut down, and
Hmm.
it's an interesting path that we're going down. So obviously, a lot of people are off work, have a little bit of downtime,
Hmm.
and maybe we can bring a little light to their day during this time. And I think a good place to kind of start from here is to talk a little bit about Future Tradesman, what it is, and then Dave, I want you to kind of tell your story a little bit, and then after you do that, I'll tell mine. But Future Tradesman is a podcast where we hope to talk about technology and
Hmm.
the people that are out there building all the stuff in manufacturing, construction, all these cool places, and how they're leveraging technology to do that. So, kind of doing a reboot here of the show and what it used to be. And we don't really know what direction we're going. It could just be me and Dave talking. We could
Hmm.
bring guests in. There's a whole myriad of ideas that are floating around, but we're most interested to just get back on the train and engage with you guys out there. And I would love to gather your feedback as we go along. So, to start off with, Dave, why don't you give us a little bit of a history on yourself and the work you've done in the industry and how you ended up on this call with me here today?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I have spent most of the last decade in the manufacturing industrial realm, from in one way, shape, form, or another. About 12 or 13 years ago, I actually went to trade school, and I got certified to go work on airplanes. And I have a little card in the FAA in my wallet from the FAA that says I can legally work on anything that flies, which is really
Super
cool.
cool.
And I actually left trade school. It was 2010 ish. The economy wasn't all that great. aviation and the airlines were in the bucket, not too all that different from what we're currently seeing. But no, it was
Oh,
terrible. And decided that I didn't want to bend sheet metal for the next foreseeable future, and ended up going and doing a handful of jobs that led me to a machine builder that build the large gantry style machines that drill and rivet airplane fuselages together, which involved working with a bunch of the aviation companies around the world, which involved building a aircraft facility on the wall of a conference room. And from that point, kind of virtually everything that I've done is to find a way to do that, and to find a way to do that better. And now we do things like talk about digital twins and virtual machines and the mobile solutions that Beloved Robot does, and automation and robotics and everything else. And much of the last decade has been finding ways to learn all of those pieces in the middle in order to kind of get to the point of what Beloved Robot does, and building mobile applications and tying manufacturing facilities together across the globe.
quick backstory on myself. So I grew up the son of a cabinet maker. My granddad built houses, so always kind of in and around those. When I wasn't at school, I was always either running around the cabinet shop or playing in one of the houses that my granddad was building. So kind of grew up with that my whole life, learning the ways of craftsmen and kind of how important that was. And I also learned very early on that I did not want to do that for a living because it was very hard work. And so got, sort of introduced to, the internet and design early on, and started my career as a graphic designer, and just sort of like self-taught myself how to do that. I'll say that a better way. So I taught myself how to do design work on the side, and was just kind of working jobs here or there. And eventually, once the iPhone came out, I just kind of got obsessed with what was going on in that space, and decided to teach myself how to build apps. So along with my buddy Zane, we kind of went off and learned how to do that, and eventually started this company. And initially, we started just wanting to build apps for anyone and everyone, and kind of stumbled our way into the niche we're in now. But yeah, we found a couple of customers back to back that were both in the industrial service space and wanted to use iPads for their employees out in the field. And so we built a couple apps for them, and it was a huge success and really had a big impact on their business. And so ever since then, that's kind of been our focus, is building these apps that interface with their existing software systems for manufacturers or industrial service companies or construction companies. So that's kind of how we ended up here today. And an interesting factoid, me and Dave were introduced by a friend, and we both live full-time. Dave lives full-time on the road in a van, and I live full-time with my wife and 4 kids in a fifth wheel RV. And we do a good bit of traveling also. So,
and they have beautiful
you will
cabinets.
notice as you follow along. That's right.
You guys do. You have great cabinets.
Yeah. So you'll that'll probably be a running theme through the show, is me asking Dave where he's at, and me possibly being on the road also, depending on how things shake out through the summer.
And and on it, most of the time I will probably be in different places. I'll give you guys as many pictures as I possibly can. But I think that brings us to a really good topic, Jarrod. And we were discussing, what's the most topical and poignant thing that we could possibly talk about. And I think it's that a lot of our customers and a lot of our friends and family and the whole coronavirus are having to find new and innovative ways to work and do what they do, and kind of figure out what the new normal is, and how we feel that we're at some sort of inflection point that 3 weeks ago when we were in New Orleans together did not seem like it wasn't even, top of mind. It wasn't even bottom of mind. We had not planned for something like this. And now we're here trying to figure out what the new normal looks like.
Yeah, so like you were saying earlier, Dave, like it feels like the whole world is kind of coming into the world that me and you have been living in for the past 5 or 6 years of working remotely, and I think like Zoom is like I saw like Zoom is like everywhere now. Like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't think they're like I don't think they're excited about profiteering off of this whole crisis, but like I feel like everybody in the world now knows what Zoom is. And if 2 weeks ago I would have asked my mom what that was, she would have had no clue.
Not at all. Not at all.
So great for them. And it really shows like building a extremely useful, powerful tool and getting it out there. You never know like what might come up that gives you this opportunity to shine. So bravo to those guys. But yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
what are your thoughts on kind of like seeing all these companies that have resisted a work from home culture, how to have to like adapt to it on the fly?
So I think it's very interesting. Before I get into that, I actually have a funny Zoom comment. So I've paid for Zoom for most of the last 3 years. It is my teleconferencing conference room of choice, as Jarrod knows, because we spent hundreds of hours on it. And on Friday, I had someone dial into the room. They told me that they went through all of the Zoom numbers before they went back to the first number, and every single one of them was busy. I have never seen a Zoom number busy before.
Wow,
I only have one Zoom number saved in my phone
wow,
in order to call in. I wouldn't even begin to, yeah. So Zoom, I mean, Zoom
wow.
and like so much of our infrastructure is being overwhelmed. And I put out a video a couple of weeks ago talking about all of the telecoms that I carry, all of the cell phone services, ways that I stay connected. And it's just been
Yeah,
a thing in my life because we've worked remotely and we travel around. And now our infrastructure is being so overwhelmed with so many people trying to use this. And um, I think we should say thanks to all of the people out there, keeping the lights on, keeping the telecoms up, literally keeping the water
yeah.
clean and the sewer systems working. Because I think we as a society can get through this. But if we start, if something happens and we don't have fresh water, most people are not going to react very well. I think that it's interesting with all of the people working remotely and has been very much along the conversations we've had about trying to find new innovative software and solutions in order to do what it is that we need to do. And I think it'll certainly be interesting because for both Jarrod and I, our main pitch as Beloved Robot is we're selling value. We're offering value to our clients. We have to continue to offer value to our clients in order for them to want to and to continue to use our products. Now, with so many people working from home, you no longer get, points for showing up, right? Like it's not Dave showed up to
Yeah.
work, he must be working hard. Everyone else is now going to need to provide value, which I think is a good thing. It may mean you don't have to work 14 hours a day, but everyone's going to have to go and provide value in order to continue to have their jobs and all of these opportunities.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that the internet has obviously made so many things possible, but there's just this there was this huge opportunity that all these companies were able to jump on literally within hours of saying, okay, you're no longer coming to the office, work from home. And I'm sure a lot of companies have struggled with that, but
Mhm.
overall it seems like from what I'm hearing from friends and family that it's been a pretty seamless move for a lot of them, which is good.
Mhm.
um, I do think like for companies that are actually building things, and like you're saying, the guys that are climbing the telephone poles and
Mhm.
working at the sewage plant and making sure that everything's up and running. What have you seen out there on that front, or hearing as far as how those companies are adapting?
I mean, I think that right, literal tradesmen, people that make their money with their hands driving their trucks around, there is going to be a need and going to continue to be a need for more of them. And quite honestly, I'm not sure how we would get around those people going out. I think that we're going to have to respect those people and find ways to make their jobs easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to respect those people, find ways to make their jobs easier. And I mean, it's very much what we've been talking about for years at Beloved Robot is we want to make the hardest jobs a little bit easier. We don't want them to have to go back to the hotel if it's open or the RV park if it's open and try to stress about, time cards and then try to put them in the mail and wonder if it's physically going to make it somewhere in the mail. So I think we are going to see the majority of those trades continue. I think we're going to see the majority of those opportunities grow. I think we're going to need to find ways to connect them to the office remotely like everyone else can do with Zoom.
Yeah. So, I mean, from my, the few conversations that I've had, I've got my landlord here actually at the office is a electrical contractor, and they actually do a bunch of work with the power company. And so, luckily they've been kind of been able to continue on with a lot of their projects because they are kind of essential services. But there has been a few things popped up. It just seems like a lot of things on their calendar have gotten moved around and shifted
Mm-hmm.
around. And then on the manufacturing side, just talking with some of my customers, I mean, a few of them are just kind of like, no one's sick right now. We're kind of
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep distance from everyone and just kind of holding their breath that no one does get sick. So I think there's kind of that. Some of them are kind of in that zone of kind of in this wait and see zone. And then others I've talked to have kind of taken different parts of the production process and tried to kind of like quarantine them off a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
keep the guys that are doing the welding in this zone, the 4 guys that do that, and then sort of keep them separate from the guys that are doing the fitting, and keep them separate from the guys that are doing the coating. And then just really try to, so in case one of those folks do get sick, they're able to sanitize that area and don't have to shut the whole shop down.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I was talking to you earlier, Dave, about, our family going to Chick-fil-A and picking up some dinner on Saturday night. It's like we pull into Chick-fil-A and the parking lot's like blocked off because you're not allowed to go in. And, you pull up through the drive-through and the person taking your order is like standing 10 feet away and they have a mask on, they have gloves on, and, they prefer to you not to hand you their credit card to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of,
It won't take
unfortunately, I
cash.
think especially over the next, yeah, yeah, especially over the next 6 months, like this is kind of the adapting that we're going to have to do to kind of figure out like how can we continue on with our lives, but make sure and ensure that everyone is safe and that we're not exposing people to things that we hope that they don't get. So I think it'll be interesting. I mean, we talk about Zoom a lot. I saw that Microsoft Teams, so which is like a communication kind of chat app that kind of comes bundled with your Microsoft stack if you have that. Like
Mm-hmm.
their user growth over the past 2 weeks has just like skyrocketed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's going to be interesting to see how, if you have a crew, if you're used to running a crew of 10 guys, and you have to scale that back to 3 or 4,
Mm-hmm.
and you're used to communicating, if your people on your production floor are used to communicating in person, if you're
Mm-hmm.
used to getting into a conference room and figuring things out, like a lot of this is going to have to be done in a virtual way, or just
Mm-hmm.
in order to keep it safe. So, I think we're going to have to get really creative in figuring out ways that, okay, we have this technology now, we have these tools, we have tools like Slack or Teams or Zoom or whatever, or we can hop on a phone call. I think that companies that work on premises are going to have to learn to adapt to this new sort of way of living for
Oh
a
yeah.
few months to see if we can leverage these technologies in an interesting way. I don't have some brilliant idea here, but
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's kind of interesting to think about and talk about in general.
No, definitely. And I think that, well, by the time this comes out, you guys should probably check out a second conversation that Jarrod and I are going to have after this, talking about maybe some remote work etiquette, maybe some ways to stay connected with different people. We've all seen some crazy stuff going down on the internet, from Thumbman to some other stuff of do's and don'ts while
Yeah.
remote working, because so many people have have come to remote work like instantaneously. And I think we'll definitely have that conversation. I think we should do our best to reiterate that this is an inflection point, that the normal that was February and beginning of March 2020, it's not going to get back to what that is. It's going to be different. Uh,
Yeah.
the world is a different place. It is changing. And all we can do is to try to give ourselves space so that as few people get sick as possible, that we can let our hospitals keep up, that we can let the supply lines and supply chains keep up. And for everyone who is looking at manufacturing, has to strongly look at what solutions they are using and are planning to use over the next 6 months to 5 years, because there are going to be winners and losers in this. The winners are going to win big. The losers are going to go out of business.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, well, I mean, to kind of look at the kind of opportunity side of it, Dave, like especially from your previous experience from the industrial automation world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've kind of been in this boom, this big boom. Everybody that we've talked to is just like they're running as fast as they can run and just trying to get everything out the door and get
Yep.
projects done as quickly as possible. And so you're going from this big boom economy to a little bit of a slowdown here, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's not too much, but it definitely seems like we're going to go into a recession here. So from
Unfortunately.
your side of the thing, from your side of things, I mean, what are some things that maybe you've seen in the past, or some things that you think is an opportunity for someone who, maybe they're an IT director at a
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing company, or they're a general manager, or a line supervisor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe these are some opportunities to kind of streamline, improve their processes, and kind of help them to become more efficient and be better prepared for a slowdown that has already come and may
Yeah.
continue on for months or years.
No, definitely. I think that now is the time that people have to look at investing into the future. And that's going to be software solutions, that may be some amount of automation, that's going to be tying your siloed machinery together. And most of the time, that probably doesn't mean we're going to spend millions of dollars networking it. It's going to be tablets and iPads. It's going to be maybe a computer in each of those systems. It's going to be looking at keeping the machines up that we need to keep up, that are actually important, and how can we possibly run these with less people, because at some point these people might get sick. We have to strongly look at investing in solutions. And that's what people are going to want. They're going to want to buy solutions that they can implement quickly. And we're going to measure that quickly in days and weeks, not months and years, because we need immediate ROI. And we want to reduce risks. And we've seen lots of people who are saying, hey, we can build anything. But we're not going to pick the people that say, hey, we can build anything. We want people that have a solution that they can implement quickly, and we can get up and running, and we reduce and mitigate risk a lot more. And Jarrod, I know that we talk to a lot of clients that part of the reason that they like what we do is because we do a lot of risk mitigation for them, because we can show them all of this back end work that we've done, and every single beloved robot solution sits on top of a 60 to 80% of pre-built stuff. We probably have a workflow that we know works for them, and we can implement quickly, again, in days or weeks most of the time, as opposed to let's sit this down, let's go through every granular detail, and then let's spend 18 months or 2 years building this out. The days and times of spending 2 years building a solution are probably gone for a very long period of time. We need to find solutions that we can work on, that we can implement quickly, because we're to the point of we need it quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even like just very like some like from my experience and what we've done over the past few years, like I think like looking at sort of like extremely manual things in your current workflow, whether you're looking at it organization wide or if there's current paper processes and you have admins or assistants that are manually entering that stuff in your ERP system or stuff like that. Like, sort of start taking, if you have a little bit of downtime, taking some of those paper processes and maybe trying to move them to Google Sheets or
Mm-hmm.
look to automate them in some way. Obviously, we would love to help you at Beloved Robot, but beyond that, there's tons of tools that you already have at your disposal that, if you could sort of remove some steps to a process of getting work in the front door and out the back door to the customer, any way you can sort of chop off labor and make it more efficient and more streamlined, whether that means from a high level building in automations or building software or buying software or just using the tools that you already have. I think those are all going to be things that during this sort of slow period, if you can sort of focus and reimagine the way that you're working, so that, I think that's on the bright side. Maybe this is an opportunity where, your company has grown and had a really good few years, and now you've got an opportunity to catch your breath for a second, reassess and say, okay, here are the parts of this process that are painful for us, or here's the things that are costing us time or money, or, here's the thing that we might could shave off and make it a little more efficient. I think now is a really good time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. So to wrap up as we get to the end here, just kind of want to leave you guys on a high note. So Dave, do you have any inspiring or hopeful ideas to pass along to anyone?
Inspiring, maybe a bit much with only 2 cups of coffee so far, Jarrod. But I would say that the normal that we've found over the last decade or plus is no longer going to be there. But it gives everyone the opportunity to take a hard look at their lives, at how they've worked, at where they've worked, at the solutions that the workplace has used, and figure out how to do what you want, how to do it better, how to have people work remotely and become more efficient and actually enjoy and live that life that you've always been talking about. There's literally never been and probably will never be a better opportunity to take a look at that and figure out how to get where you want to go than right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like, people listening to this are probably a little more technically inclined and kind of lean towards that, whether, you work in IT or not, you're just kind of interested in that space. So I think it is a time for your abilities and your interests to really shine, and for you to be able to take that interest that you have and apply it to your work in a way that you've never probably been able to. And so I think that's, like Dave saying, it's an opportunity to learn a new skill, or get deeper into how the business works and
Mm-hmm.
how technology can help solve some of the issues that are going to pop up, have already popped up, and might pop up over the next year or so. So we hope that this show is kind of an opportunity for us to share those stories, either through the people that we know, or maybe we'll meet people through this show is our really end goal. And we hope to kind of be a place where you can come and learn and get excited about new technologies that are out there, and just kind of learn more about this space in general.
Yep.
So we really appreciate you guys listening. And yeah, I guess we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Dave, do you have any parting words for everyone?
I would just say, if anyone is actually listening to this and wants to let us know that they're listening to it, has any ideas or suggestions, we will leave contact information, or you guys can find us at belovedrobot.com. Please feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk just in general about technology, about a solution, or about an application, any way that we could help you or help the world become a better place.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. See you guys next time. See you, Dave.
Bye-bye.